My name is Emma, and today I want to share a story that is very close to my heart. I ask you to listen to it completely because it carries a message that will make you think, feel, and maybe even change the way you see the world. It happened a few years ago, but I remember it like it was yesterday. The memory is still so clear in my mind. The colors, the sounds, the feelings. Some memories never fade. It was a chilly autumn morning. The wind was soft but sharp, and the trees were slowly shedding their golden leaves. I sat by the window, sipping a cup of hot tea, watching the leaves dance through the air. The world outside looked calm, but inside my heart there was a storm. I was waiting for him. His name was Daniel. He was my best friend. The kind of friend who makes you laugh when you want to cry. The kind of friend who understands your silence better than anyone else. But Daniel had left. It had been 4 months since he walked away. 4 long, quiet months. I still remember the day he left. It was raining heavily, and the sky was as gray as my heart. We stood outside my house, both of us soaking wet. He held my hands, his eyes filled with pain. "Emma," he whispered, his voice barely above the sound of the rain. "I have to go." I shook my head. My tears mixed with the rain, and I clung to him, not wanting to let go. "No," I choked out. "You can't. Please, Daniel. Please stay." But he pulled away, his hands trembling slightly. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I need to figure things out. I can't do this anymore." And just like that, he walked away. I stood there in the rain, my clothes drenched, my heart breaking. I watched him disappear down the road, not once looking back. And I didn't know then if I would ever see him again. After he left, the world became dull. The places we used to visit felt empty. The songs we used to sing together suddenly sounded hollow. I tried to smile, to move on, but there was always something missing. Him. There were nights when I would sit by the window, hoping, just hoping, that maybe I would see him walking down the road again. But he never came. And then, one cold evening, everything changed. I was walking home from work. The wind was sharp, and I pulled my scarf tighter around my neck. The streets were quiet, and the lamplights cast long shadows on the sidewalk. As I walked past the park, something made me stop. It was faint, but I heard it, the sound of someone playing the guitar. My heart skipped a beat. I knew that sound. I knew it too well. I turned and walked toward the music. My feet moved faster and faster, and then I saw him, Daniel. He was sitting on a worn wooden bench, his head slightly bent, his fingers gently strumming his old guitar, the same guitar he used to play for me. I froze. My hands started to tremble. I stared at him, afraid that if I blinked, he would disappear. His hair was a little longer, and his face was tired, but it was him. It was really him. And then, as if he could feel my eyes on him, he looked up. For a brief moment, neither of us moved. We just stared at each other, and then he smiled, softly, sadly. "Hey," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. My throat tightened, and I felt tears stinging my eyes. I took a slow step forward, and then another, until I was standing right in front of him. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. He slowly placed his guitar down and stood up. His eyes were filled with something I couldn't quite describe. Something raw and broken, but still gentle. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I shouldn't have left. I thought I needed space. I thought I needed time. But," his voice cracked slightly, "I was wrong." I stared at him, my heart pounding in my chest. He took a step closer. "I missed you," he said softly. "I missed you so much, Emma." And then, before I could stop myself, I threw my arms around him. I buried my face in his chest, and I started to cry. I cried for the nights I spent missing him. I cried for the words I didn't get to say. I cried because he was here. He came back. He wrapped his arms around me tightly, as if he was afraid I might slip away. His hands gently stroked my hair, and he whispered over and over, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." We stood there for what felt like forever. The wind swirled around us, but I didn't feel it. All I felt was his warmth. When we finally pulled apart, he wiped the tears from my face with the sleeves of his jacket. "Why did you come back?" I asked softly, my voice shaking. He gave me a faint smile, the same smile that once made me fall for him. "Because I realized something," he whispered. "No matter where I go or how far I run, my heart always comes back to you." My breath caught in my throat. His words were soft, but they shook my soul. We sat down on the bench together, and he took my hand in his. His fingers were cold, but his grip was strong and steady. We sat there for hours, talking about everything and nothing. He told me about the places he had gone, the people he had met, and the mistakes he had made, and I listened. I didn't care where he had been. I only cared that he was here. When the night grew colder, he wrapped his scarf around my neck and held me close. "Emma," he whispered softly, "I know I hurt you. I know I broke your heart, but I promise I will spend the rest of my life making it up to you, if you let me." I looked into his eyes, the same eyes that once filled my life with light, and I knew that no matter how far he had gone, no matter how long he had been away, he was still my Daniel. So I held his face in my hands, and with all the love I had kept locked inside me, I whispered, "I never stopped waiting for you." And then, slowly, carefully, we kissed. It was soft and slow, but it carried all the unspoken words, all the unshed tears, and all the broken pieces we were now putting back together. That night, Daniel walked me home. He held my hand the entire way, as if he was afraid to let go. When we reached my house, he turned to me. "Can I see you again tomorrow?" he asked softly. I smiled faintly. "Tomorrow?" And every day after, and from that night on, he never left again. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening. to my story. If it touched your heart, please subscribe and like this for my hard work. It helps me share more beautiful and meaningful stories with you. And remember, sometimes people leave. Sometimes they lose their way. But if love is true, it finds its way back. Always. The seasons slowly changed, but my memories of Grandma never did. They remained as clear and beautiful as the day she shared her secret with me. And as I grew older, I found myself holding on to her lessons more tightly. Years passed. I finished school, got a job, and moved to a small apartment in the city. Life became busier, faster. Days blurred into nights, and weeks slipped through my fingers like grains of sand. Yet no matter how busy I became, I never stopped wearing the silver locket. It rested against my heart, quietly reminding me of Grandma's gentle presence. One evening, after a long day at work, I found myself walking home in the rain. The city lights reflected on the wet pavement, creating a beautiful mosaic of colors. People hurried by with umbrellas, their faces blurred by the misty drizzle. I walked slowly, letting the rain soak into my skin. It reminded me of the summer, storms. Grandma and I used to watch from the porch. As I turned a corner, I saw a small flower shop tucked between two tall buildings. Its windows were fogged up, but through the glass, I could see rows of delicate flowers, lilies, daisies, and roses, all neatly arranged. I don't know why, but I felt a tug in my chest, pulling me toward the shop. I stepped inside, and a soft bell chimed above the door. The sweet scent of fresh flowers filled the air. A woman behind the counter greeted me with a warm smile. "Can I help you find something special?" she asked kindly. I glanced around the shop. My eyes landed on a small bouquet of jasmine flowers in a clear glass vase. My breath caught. Jasmine. I walked over to them, my fingers lightly brushing against the delicate white petals. The familiar scent brought tears to my eyes. It smelled just like Grandma. Her scarf, her hands, her hugs. Without hesitation, I bought the bouquet and carried it home carefully, shielding it from the rain beneath my coat. When I got home, I placed the flowers on the small wooden table by the window. I sat down and stared at them for a long time. The room was quiet, except for the faint patter of raindrops on the glass. Reaching into my sweater, I gently unclasped the locket and opened it. The tiny photograph of my grandparents smiled back at me. I traced their faces with my fingertip, and a soft smile tugged at the corners of my lips. That night, I lit a small candle and sat by the window, the bouquet of jasmine filling the room with its sweet fragrance. I opened the music box, letting its soft, haunting melody drift through the space. As the music played, I closed my eyes and imagined Grandma sitting beside me. I could almost feel her hand on mine, almost hear her gentle voice, humming along with the tune. The warmth of her love filled the room, making it feel less empty. The next morning, as the sun painted the sky with golden hues, I felt a gentle sense of peace I hadn't felt in a long time. I got dressed, put on the locket, and walked to the park. The same park where I once met the old man. The pond was still and quiet. The ducks glided lazily across the water. I sat on the same wooden bench, the one where he had once spoken about love, lingering in the little things. I stared at the water, letting the cool morning breeze brush against my face. Suddenly, I heard soft footsteps beside me. I turned my head and saw a young woman with a little boy holding her hand. He couldn't have been more than 5 years old. His cheeks were rosy, and his eyes were wide with curiosity. "Do you mind if we sit here?" the woman asked politely. I smiled and shook my head. "Of course not." They sat down, and the little boy eagerly leaned forward, watching the ducks. He clapped his hands every time one of them flapped its wings. His laughter rang out, clear and bright, and for a moment, it made me think of my childhood. I smiled at him. "Do you like the ducks?" I asked. He nodded enthusiastically. "They're my favorite." I laughed softly. His joy was infectious. The woman turned to me with a kind smile. "My son loves coming here," she said. "It reminds me of when I was little. My grandmother used to bring me to this park too." I felt my chest tighten slightly, but in a good way. Grandmothers are special, aren't they? I said softly. She nodded. "They are." The little boy suddenly turned to me and pointed at the silver locket around my neck. His eyes were wide with curiosity. "Is that a treasure?" he asked innocently. I smiled. Feeling my throat tighten, I gently held the locket between my fingers. "Yes," I whispered softly. "It's my greatest treasure." He grinned. "What's inside?" I glanced at the young woman, who smiled and gave me a small nod. Slowly, I opened the locket and showed him the tiny photograph. "This is my grandma and grandpa," I said softly. He stared at the picture with fascination. "They look happy." "They were," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He smiled brightly. "They're still happy. In heaven, right?" I felt my breath catch in my throat. My eyes stung with unexpected tears. I blinked them back and smiled at him. "Yes," I whispered, my voice breaking slightly. "In heaven." He gave me a wide, toothy grin, then turned his attention back to the ducks, clapping excitedly as they splashed in the water. I sat there for a while, watching the little boy's innocent joy, and I felt something shift inside me, a gentle healing warmth. When the woman and her son finally got up to leave, she turned to me and smiled softly. "Thank you for sharing your treasure with us," she said quietly. I smiled. "Thank you for reminding me how precious it is." As they walked away, I stared at the pond, the locket still warm in my hand. The morning sunlight danced on the water, creating shimmering ripples of gold. I closed my eyes, and for a brief moment, I could almost hear Grandma's laughter in the wind, and I smiled, because I knew she was there, watching over me, holding my hand, just as she always had. So, to anyone listening right now, I want you to remember this. The people we love, never truly leave us. Their love lingers in the little things, in the flowers they adored, in the songs they hummed, in the memories that bloom in our hearts like spring flowers. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe and like this for my hard work. It helps me share more heartfelt and meaningful stories with you. And no matter where you are, remember this: love is the one thing that never fades. It becomes part of the wind, part of the sunlight, part of the earth, and it stays with us forever.